66 million years ago, Earth was a finished masterpiece. A planet ruled by titans, perfected over 150 million years of evolution. Towering tyrannosaurs stalked the forests. Herds of Edmontosaurus browsed in ancient floodplains. It was their world. But then, a flicker in the sky. A 6-mile-wide messenger of death was approaching. In a single day, this entire kingdom of giants would be reduced to ash and bone. And yet, something was waiting in the shadows to inherit the devastation. To understand this survivor, we must first understand their prison. The late Cretaceous was an ecological fortress. Every major ecological niche was already claimed, locked down by a Saurian dynasty. Dinosaurs dominated the day. Pterosaurs commanded the skies. Giant marine reptiles, the mosasaurs, ruled the seas. So where were our ancestors? They were living, quite literally, beneath the notice of the giants. For millions of years, mammals had been suppressed. They were small, often no larger than a modern shrew or badger. These were not future kings. They were professional hiders. Creatures like Didelphodon, a tough marsupial relative, or Purgatorius, a tiny climbing creature, perhaps a very early primate ancestor. They spent their lives in the leaf litter, in burrows, and active only in the deep of night. They ate insects. They ate fallen fruits and seeds. They scrambled to avoid the small raptors that hunted them. They were, by all measures, on the margins of life. Evolution had kept them in this box, and the dinosaurs were the lid. But this long, difficult apprenticeship in the shadows had forged the very tools they would need. A world of giants had inadvertently created the ultimate survivor. But first, that world had to die. The day began like any other in the late Cretaceous. But it would not end as one. High above the atmosphere, an object the size of a mountain was accelerating. It struck the Yucatan Peninsula with the force of 10 billion atomic bombs. The location was, geologically speaking, the worst possible place. The asteroid vaporized a shallow sea and the sulfur-rich limestone beneath it. Music cuts in, a deafening percussive stinger, wall of sound. The world ignited. The first killer was not the blast. It was heat. Trillions of tons of molten ejecta were blasted back into space. As they fell back to Earth, they superheated the atmosphere into a global oven. The sky itself became a radiant boiler, roasting the surface of continents. Any dinosaur, any animal caught in the open, was incinerated in minutes. Forests flash combusted. Rivers and lakes boiled. The planet was sterilized by an invisible wave of thermal radiation. This was only the first hour. For those that survived the fire, the rock, and the wind, a new horror began. The sky, now choked with ash and vaporized sulfur, went completely dark. Total, absolute darkness. Not for a day. Not for a week. Scientists believe a global winter descended upon the Earth, lasting for years. The sun was gone. Temperatures plummeted by as much as 25 degrees Celsius. And the very foundation of life on Earth collapsed. Photosynthesis stopped. The plants died. The herbivores that ate the plants starved. The carnivores that ate the herbivores starved. The food web crumbled. This was the Great Filter. The oceans, which had absorbed the aerosolized sulfur, fared no better. They became toxic, acidified. The plankton at the base of the marine food web were annihilated. This ecological cascade swept through the seas, killing the ammonites, the plesiosaurs, and the mighty mosasaurs. In this new, freezing, dark, and toxic world, being an apex predator was a death sentence. Their size, their power, their specialization. These were no longer assets. They were liabilities. The age of giants was over. 75% of all species on Earth were wiped out. The non-avian dinosaurs, after 150 million years of dominion, were gone forever. The planet was now a silent, freezing graveyard. But in the blackened soil, beneath the ash, something was still breathing. For years, the Earth was a realm of twilight and frost. The great forests were fields of skeletal, blackened trunks. The air was thin and toxic. This was the crucible, the ultimate test of resilience. The rules of survival, written over millions of years, were now useless. Strength was irrelevant. Speed was pointless. In this new world, the only trait that mattered was the ability to endure. So, how did our ancestors pass this impossible test? They survived, it turns out, not in spite of their limitations. They survived because of them. Let's examine this remarkable survival toolkit. The first asset was size. They were small. A small body requires very little fuel. While a T-Rex needed hundreds of pounds of meat a day. A mammal like Purgatorius could survive on a handful of insects or seeds. In a world where the food chain had evaporated, having a low metabolism was critical. And this connects to their second great asset, their diet. They were not picky. While specialized dinosaurs starved. These mammals were generalists. They ate the world's leftovers. They were detritivores, thriving on the very wreckage of the old world. They could eat fungus growing on rotting logs. They could eat insects feasting on the endless decay. They could eat the few hardy seeds that remained in the soil. This flexible, unfussy diet gave them a foothold in a world of starvation. But their single greatest adaptation, their silver bullet, was their home address. They lived underground. For millions of years, burrowing was a defensive tactic to hide from dinosaurs. On the day of the impact, it became an apocalypse shelter. When the atmosphere turned into a broiler, the surface of the Earth was a death zone. But just a few feet down, insulated by soil, the temperatures were survivable. The burrowers were shielded from the worst of the thermal pulse. Then came the impact winter. As the world froze, their burrows provided crucial insulation against the cold. They were, in effect, in a state of suspended animation, hibernating through the apocalypse. These creatures, small, versatile, and hidden, were the only ones equipped to wait out the end of the world. And when the skies finally began to clear, years later, they were the ones who emerged. The survivors crawled out from their burrows. They emerged into a world they could not have recognized. A silent planet, scrubbed clean of its ancient masters. The 150 million year dynasty of the dinosaurs had ended in fire and ice. The air was finally clearing. The sun was returning. Ferns, the world's first responders, carpeted the gray landscape in green. For the mammals, this was not an ending. It was a liberation. The great filter had been passed. The lid on their evolutionary box was gone. The world was now an empty canvas, waiting for new artists. Before the impact, mammals were confined to the shadows. Now, for the first time, they could walk in the sun. This was the beginning of the Age of Mammals, a period of explosive evolution known as adaptive radiation. All the ecological jobs the dinosaurs once held were now open. Who would be the new apex predator? Mammals stepped up, evolving into forms like the creodonts. Fierce, wolf-like hunters. Who would rule the forests? Our own ancestors, the early primates, took to the trees. They evolved grasping hands and forward-facing eyes. Even the seas, emptied of the mosasaurs, were a new frontier. Some mammals, like Pachycetus, began a journey back to the water, giving rise to the whales. From those tiny, shivering survivors came the blueprint for bats that fly, lions that hunt, and whales that sing. This single catastrophic event this cosmic reset button is the only reason our own story could begin. The KPG Extinction teaches us a profound lesson. It shows that life's greatest innovations are often born from its deepest crises. The end of one world is, and always has been, the violent, chaotic, and beautiful beginning of the next. If you would like to join us on our next expedition into Earth's darkest hours in search of the light of life, consider joining our Researchers Guild by subscribing to the channel, and let us know in the comments. What do you believe is the most remarkable adaptation mammals evolved after the dinosaurs disappeared?